Hey everybody, welcome back to the Seafarer Social Podcast. And today I'm joined by a fantastic guest. It's none other than Hannah Riekemann-Wood, who is based very close to me actually in sunny, for once, Hampshire in the UK.
Doc.
It turns out me and Hannah actually go to the same gym, which is, just by chance. And this is probably the first time ever that I've physically lived this close to a guest. So firstly, it's great to have you here, Hannah. And
Thank you very much.
let's definitely grab a coffee at some point. And secondly, how are you?
Yeah, not bad. Glad that the sun is suddenly come out now, and we're not hearing fog signals reverberating up and down the hill, which
Yeah,
we
for
were this
sure.
morning.
We were indeed. So Hannah, let's get straight into it. Tell me a little bit more about your career as a seafarer.
So I started off as a cadet in 2015 and passed as an officer of the watch deck in 2018. Had very successful few years at sea, really enjoyed it. And then I got my chief mates in 2022. And that was about 3 months after giving birth to my son, who is now 2.5 years old and full of energy. And since that point, I am now working in a shore-based establishment. I'm not at sea at the moment, but I think the ultimate aim would then be eventually at some point to return back to my maritime roots and regain that, and hopefully with a view to gaining my Master Mariners.
Nice. Okay, well, let's go right back to the beginning then. So you started off as a cadet in 2015. What was it about seafaring and the ocean that attracted you to a career at sea?
So actually, I was a drama student. I kind of put a whole
Wow.
spin on things. I did drama at university. I did a master's in drama. I loved it. And I then got a job working in London for a totally different firm who specialized in security and medical evacuations. And from there, I was putting in for a promotion at work. And they said, well, yeah, you're ticking all these boxes, but you just don't have any real world experience. So why don't you apply and get some real world experience? So I was having a look and I thought, okay, well, what could I do? And first thing that came up was, you type in experience, security experience, up comes the British Army. And I thought, no, I don't really want to do that because for various reasons, my little one. And then the next thing that popped up was this other company, and they offered the opportunity to do the maritime, but you also got a degree with it. So you got professionally recognized qualifications. And I thought it was very interesting. And so I kind of threw my hat in the ring and never really thought much of it, and then started stumbling my way through the application process. And before I knew it, I was at the start of training, and it was down at Dartmouth. And the rest, as I say, was history. But I think the interesting thing that a lot of people asking me is, how do I go from being a drama student to working on the bridge of a ship? And I say it's the exact same thing. It's, all the world is a stage. The bridge is no different. Ship is no different. Everybody has their roles. Everybody has their place. You'll definitely get some drama queens, but effectively, you're also having the producer governing the production, the finances, the strategy, how you're producing a show, etc. So it's no different. It's just changing one stage for another, really.
And what was some of your best experiences of your career? I'm not saying it as if your career is over now, but while you were at sea, what were some of the best experiences that you remember?
Oh gosh, that's really hard. I think the thing I loved the most was being at watch on nighttime. And you're standing outside and you're seeing the stars and the Milky Way, and you're seeing, everything dip below the horizon. And you have the most amazing chats with the most incredible people. But my career, so I was with the Royal Fleet Auxiliary, was all over the place. I got to go to the Caribbean, I got to go to the Mediterranean, up north, the Gulf, everywhere. And a lot of what I got to do was these incredible operations and meet these incredible people. So,
Nice.
yeah, you can't really pinpoint one thing. That's pretty hard trying to pinpoint one definitive moment over a whole career.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I've heard many people say a similar sort of thing. It's a beautiful experience being at the bridge at night watch, and
Mm.
yeah, some of the views you have are fantastic. I think one of the things I'm really interested in talking about with you today, Hannah, is something that there's been a lot of noise on LinkedIn about, and I've put some content out there myself, which is the complexity sometimes of being a woman at sea. I recently put a post up about how in India, they have one of the highest success rates of volume of female pilots. And although I completely understand and appreciate, and many people have highlighted this to me as well, that you cannot really compare the two because the jobs are so differently. I mean, a pilot is not away from home as long as a seafarer is, for example. However, going back to my point, India has one of the highest volume rates of female pilots in the world. And the reason why is because from a government level, they invested heavily into frameworks that essentially allow a female, once she goes on maternity leave, to come back into the workplace at a pace that fits her. I made this comparison and said that there's a lot that we can learn about this. There's a lot that we could take from this as an industry and apply to the maritime industry. So before we get into that, I'm interested just to know, what was your experience like being a woman at sea? Were you respected? Did you feel included?
Yes and no. I think most females will come out with some story of treatment that they've had at sea. I had some really great experiences. I've also had some not particularly pleasant experiences. And where you have such a very small proportion of the maritime industry being female is very difficult. So you either have people who try hard to reach their way to the top and are successful. You have people who try to reach hard to the top, but they're not particularly compassionate to those around them. And you feel the need to prove yourself quite a lot. You have to justify everything you do. You have to justify the clothes you wear, how active you are to get on courses, how fast you're promoting, how slow you're promoting, why have you promoted, are you wanting to go on this course or are you wanting to have a family? So there's a lot of balance there. And it's not necessarily just for the single females. It's females in a couple, females in a family, females with caring responsibilities. It's all highly nuanced. And I think that as an industry, on the whole, it's not just for females, but, specifically looking at the female contingent, we're not very alive to that. We're not very aware of actually the nuances as to why women may want to go to sea and seek a professional qualification, which a lot of us do. And we're very proud of that.
Yeah, of course. And I totally agree that there probably should be, there definitely should be a lot more advertising towards women and telling them, that this career actually exists and it's an option, not just on a national level, but on an international level. But if you had to put your finger down to it, why do you think the margins sway so much? I think it's 98% is men, 2% women. Did you ever feel like the job was out of your depth? Did you ever feel that there was any limitations due to your sex? What do you think there has been such a stark difference between the ratio?
So I think the interesting thing would be to look at the ratio through the ages of when people join to when they retire. The government recently, a couple of days ago, posted a whole series of statistics and data on the number of men, the number of women for the various ages, and the qualifications they've received. So some of it is, you'll look at the cadets, the trainees, the apprentices, and you'll easily have about 30% of them being female, which is great. And then you go through to officer of the watch level for both engineering, TO, and deck officer, and the numbers jump down, like massively. You then go to the next step up, chief mates, your seconds ticket, the numbers plummet even further, and then by the time you get to master mariner level, you're talking about 1%, 2% of all master mariners in the UK being female. And I think we have to work out why that is. And for a lot of women, or for a few women who are at sea, they don't want to necessarily have children and they might not want to have a family, and that's entirely their prerogative and their choice. But normally by the time you get to the chief mate's master's level, you might be thinking that, like, do I want to have a family? I might be thinking of settling down. I might want to, or I have elderly parents and I need to have caring responsibilities for them. It could literally be anything. And the issue we're seeing at the moment is that when women are getting to that, I'd like to have a family, there's no policy in place. There's no framework to support having family and having a maritime career. It's very much seen as the either or. You either have a career or you don't. And that's not really in keeping with UK modern society. And that's something I think we need to address. And that's not necessarily for the parents, it's also for those with any other moment in their life that they might go, oh, actually, I need a bit of help here from my employer, my organization, whomever it may be, in order to support that. And whilst we have some companies in the UK or globally who are able to achieve that, others I feel do definitely fall short.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that it's also important to note that although we are talking about maternity for women, and this is such an important topic, you also have to consider paternity for the dads as well, right?
Absolutely.
Because that's the other thing. And sometimes I think that gets forgotten about. We should just be talking about frameworks, period, for people that have responsibilities due to being a human. You know what I mean?
Well, I mean, people have been having children for thousands of years, and hopefully for the benefit of the human race, we don't stop that. And I think, as you were saying, that, there's nothing really to support the male or the paternal or the other parent. I mean, in a modern society, we have a lot of parents who are similar, same sex. So we have to be really careful how we're nuancing the conversation in order to support seafarers. And, we do group it as seafarers or people who work in the maritime industry.
Yeah, I agree. So let's say, for example, you had the opportunity yourself to be put in some sort of ITF panel or IMO, ILO panel, and you were in front of all of the flag states, all of the big shipping companies, and you had the complete flexibility to design a ideal framework specifically for seafarers with maternity, paternity at the front of your mind. How do you think that framework would look in a way whereby the shipping company can retain the talent and the seafarer can be a good parent and be a good seafarer? How do you think that framework would look?
So there is actually a really great organization that has something at the moment. It's by no means perfect, but it definitely works. And you can't put in a blanket one-size-fits-all approach. So from my own research, they spoke to the parents who are impacted. They said, okay, what does a great solution look like for you? And what we see a lot of the time from organizations is that they're not necessarily willing to do that. They'll hear you, but they don't necessarily listen to what it is you are saying, much less actually talk to the impacted people. So you need to be able to offer things such as part-time working schemes, where you need to be able to offer people that opportunity that they might not necessarily do the full 4-month trip, 5-month trip, 6-month trip, but maybe 2 months, 3 months is perfectly sufficient. That might come with some form of salary sacrifice, but effectively they can have their career, they can still do the courses, and they can still be great parents. People might want to have a full-time sea trip. That's also a possibility. We also have to be aware of parents in the same organization who both want to have a career, who both want to be parents, and there's the organization concerned offers people the opportunity to apply for shore post positions within the company, and one parent will be at sea, the other parent will be working in a shore post for a period of time, and then at some point they'll change over. And that normally comes up to maybe when one parent is effectively doing their chief mates or their seconds ticket or master mariners, or it's right at their point in their career, they need to get back to sea, they need to, get their skill sets back up and running, effectively get their STCWs in date again, and it seems to work. So we have to be aware that we can't just do a one-size-fits-all. We have to offer part-time working, we have to offer the flexible working, we need to maybe offer parents or people in caring responsibilities or just the general people in the organization who might need a break, the opportunity to apply for shore positions. And in that way, you're retaining talent because people have a loyalty to the organization. They want to stay. They want to improve their careers. You're retaining that knowledge, that experience that, in a modern UK merchant navy, we're so desperate for. We need the seafarers with those experience levels to stay, not go abroad, not go elsewhere, but to stay within the UK in line with the government's Maritime 2050 strategy. And we also need to be able to offer people a choice. Modern society isn't about you enter a profession at the age of 18, and then at 65 you get chucked out with your clock or your vase or your little wristwatch and say, thank you very much, enjoy your retirement. We don't do that now as a modern society. And I think if we offer people a flexibility of life, we listen to them, we hear what it is they want to say, and provide those frameworks, that is when we will see success. And we're seeing that from different companies around the world who are starting to tap into that, offering slightly amended contracts to individuals from other countries, for their religious reasons or societal reasons. They might not necessarily be able to do the full couple of months at sea, but they still have an opportunity to be a seafarer. They still have an opportunity to learn their trade, get those experience levels up, pass the knowledge on to the next generation. And that's when we're going to start seeing things come alive and hopefully see the maritime industry do a U-turn from where it is at the moment.
Yeah, I think it's important that we do learn from these companies that are rolling out these successful frameworks, and we roll them out further across the industry, because I do think it would save, you save a lot more money retaining talent than just constantly recruiting, and takes a lot more time and effort. And if you retain someone the right way, that person will usually tell more people about the job, which will essentially do the recruitment for you. So I think retaining talent is actually so good for the bottom line for seafarers, shipping companies.
Yeah, and we also have to be alive to people, you're giving people that mental well-being as well. People don't want to be, a lot of people, I should say, don't want to be unemployed. It doesn't really work.
Yeah.
And being able to offer people the flexibility of choice, once they know that framework fits them, fits their family, they're not likely to move. There's lots of great studies and statistics on, in organizations and men in organizations, that men are more likely to chop and change, whereas the females of the organization, if they know that it works for them and works for their family unit, whatever that family unit may look like, it might be with kids, without kids, with a cat, with a dog, whatever, they're less likely to move.
Yeah. Maria Dixon, lady from London who's been with Worcester for 40, 50 years, she was saying just the same thing. If you pay women fairly and you pay them, they'll give you loyalty as long as they can pay for a childminder when they need to, whatever, and they can take care of their bills. If you give them loyalty, they'll give you loyalty back. And I think that's so important. And I think we can't ignore 50% of the world's talent as well. One of the things I'm really interested in talking to you about that just came to my mind is a point you mentioned earlier on about how sometimes it can feel like, or in some circumstances it's presented that it's one or the other. You're either a seafarer or you're a mum, basically. And this comes from the culture, I guess you could say, maybe the company. How do you think, what sort of mental effect do you think that has on someone when they are constantly, the concept of having a family is almost demonized? Is it likely then that we're going to have 40, 50-year-old women that, maybe be at the top of their career, but they turn back and they go, oh my God, I can't believe I didn't do it. It's too late now. Yes, I understand not everybody wants to be a parent, and that's fine. But if your job is saying, no, you're either successful commercially or you can go and be a parent, and you're kind of demonizing the concept of being a parent, what does that do to someone's brain, and how does that affect them later in life when maybe they have regrets? Maybe they won't, but maybe they will.
I think on both sides it's pretty horrific. Kind of using your example first, I think, when you're aware of people around you being told, I'm sorry you're pregnant, that's the end of your career, you then become a bit more hardened towards possibly having a family. When I was in my 20s, I was seeing some of my friends effectively be told that, I'm sorry that you're pregnant, you need to leave now, essentially. And I had almost decided, that's it, I don't want kids. I want to be a successful person. I want to have my successful career. And it was only because of change of circumstance, I met my husband, and we then decided, actually, we do want to have a family. That mindset, that view, that kind of fight or flight mode did dissipate. I imagine that they're probably, I imagine probably that for those people who have chosen not to have children or chosen not to have that path, that's perfectly fine. You are perfectly allowed to not have children. I mean, they're smelly and stinky half the time, but they're great, apart from when they keep you up at night. But kind of feel you didn't have that option, that will really sting because it's not your choice. It might be your choice to not have the family and to have the career, but at some point in your mind or at some level in your mind, you'll think, I was not offered that luxury, that choice of having a family. And conversely, on the other foot, when you do have a family, when you do have children, when you go, I'm now pregnant, to then have that really crushing realization of, I will not be supported. I am now on my own. I will have to quit the career I love, the job I love, the profession I love, because I will not have that support. That is horrific in terms of mental health. And I see a lot of colleagues in the industry, a lot of friends in the industry really suffer from their mental health as a direct result of it. And for something that could be so easily and readily changed, it doesn't take a huge amount to change and to listen to people and say, okay, well, what does success look like for you? And, where I used to work, we used to talk about quick wins. What is a quick win that we can offer you to retain you, to help you, to support your mental well-being? And we talk a lot about mental well-being and a lot about emotional health. And, in the UK, we still have diversity and DEI initiatives, but we like to talk about it. But when it comes to actually putting it into practice and actually talking to the people impacted, we have a lot to learn still, and there is still a lot of headway we need to make.
Yeah, I totally agree. I just think, and this could possibly go into a completely different direction, where it's not even maritime, it's just like a society issue. But I just think it's a really big problem when we make women in particular choose between one or the other. I think that we live in a world now where, and again, I know seafaring is a little bit different because you have to physically be present somewhere for long durations of time. But I still think it's possible with a little bit of creativity and leaning on other industries, how they've coped with this sort of circumstance. But I think it's a really big problem when you start saying to women, it's one or the other, right? Like, what if the women want to be the best mum they can possibly be and the highest C-suite level director, boss there can be as well? Like, that's okay. We should be encouraging that and creating frameworks. And I think from an employer's perspective, a lot of the time what it comes down to is the cost, right? Yes, you have to pay for the maternity leave. Yes, there will be times where they'll have to take more time out of the office. But think about what a woman can offer to a crew, to a team. A completely different way of thinking, a different set of morals that can actually create. And I think if you can relate that to sort of the bottom line, I think, and make employers see, and again, I'm not saying this is the same for everyone, but make employers see it from actually just how impactful it can be to have a mother as part of your fleet. Like, actually being a mum can give you superpowers. My partner,
Thanks.
Charlotte. No, but it's true. It's true. Seriously, my partner Charlotte. I've watched the way that she's not a seafarer. She works with me, but I've watched the way she approaches speaking to people now and handling clients. And there's a difference in her ever since she's become a mum, and I see a value in that. Maybe that's something, and I think that value could actually be provided in seafaring as well. How can you nurture the rest of your crew? Something that you get once you become a mum. I just think there's something that we're not tapping into as an industry there. We're going, hang on, actually, this could be a superpower for us if we approach it in the right way.
Absolutely. I completely agree. I think the one nuance I would make on that is just to change the mother into parent, because we see a lot of really great dads in the organization who might not have necessarily been offered the same luxury of choice that maybe a mother would have by virtue of either they're single dads or they're, single sex couples. But I agree. I think, retaining parents is not difficult. It's, there might need to be some creativity, but some of the most creative people are also some of the most compassionate people. And they say that the smartest person in the room is the one with the most compassion, because they are able to think outside the box. It doesn't necessarily mean they'll give you the answer you want, but you are fully aware that they've heard you, they've listened to you, they've considered everything, and then they will tell you what they need to have happen or what they can't have happen with reasons why. And the way in which we approach bringing parents into an organization, you're building that brand loyalty to the organization, but you're building the experience, you're building your knowledge basis, you are building your retention levels, generating a whole generation of people and individuals who are passionate, who are able to facilitate those work-life balances. Maybe we're not getting it right all the time. Sometimes I feel like as a parent, I'm just winging it from day to day and hoping for the best. But at least we're bringing a level of humility that maybe some other individuals might not necessarily have. I mean, as a female on the bridge, I tended to find that a lot of, I had very different conversations with my watchkeepers that maybe the other male officer of the watches didn't. They tended to get, more things like talking about the football or sports or, the usual kind of midnight watch conversations. I tended to get things like, I'm homeless and I don't know what I'm going to do. Right, let's sort that out. I have just broken up with my girlfriend and I don't know what to do, but she's the love of my life. Okay. What did you say? What did she say? So we tended to get more of the person conversations. I've got this issue. I don't really know how to resolve it, but I don't necessarily want to talk to my line manager, my boss, my colleagues. And sometimes I might be the only female on the ship. Sometimes I might be one of 10, 15.
But Hannah, just to jump in there, because you've just put something in my mind. Exactly what you're describing right now, the comfort that people seek from yourself and the compassion is exactly the job description that I am told is necessary when you become a captain. Because when I speak to captains, they say to me, it's 95% about human leadership and management and 5% about theory. Like the best captains. The amount of captains I've spoke to who say things like, at the beginning of the day, I don't ask anyone to come up to the bridge. I don't want them to feel like they have that nervous walk up to the bridge. I mean, everybody where they are, we have a cup of coffee individually and we shoot the shit for 15 minutes. We talk about what's going on. And exactly what you're describing right now is exactly what I've seen in terms of the unique qualities about what's created from a good captain to an excellent captain. The ones who have been doing it for years and years and years successfully and always have a happy crew. So again, I think there's something that we can learn from this because it's actually being applied at the top level.
Oh, completely. I think some of the best captains I had, thinking back on one of them, they had such a dry sense of humor, but it was brilliant. And in a way, I felt I could approach them and say, Captain, I have this problem, I have this issue. And I never got the impression that they were looking at me for being a female. I got the impression that they were looking at me and going, okay, well, this is a qualified officer, the watch chief mate. They know what they are doing. They know their job. And the worst ones, I think, were the ones that didn't listen. They didn't hear, they didn't communicate, they didn't talk. They might have paid a bit of lip service of, oh yeah, I'm listening to my people, but actually they didn't really. So yeah, it's really interesting what you're saying. I think, within a leadership position in the maritime industry, there's a lot we can learn. And that instantly when you go on board a ship and you go, oh, this is a really great ship. I'm getting a really buzzy atmosphere. The ship seems in a positive state of morale. Or alternatively, you go on a ship and go, oh God, this is going to be a fun 4 months. Yeah. So we have a lot we can learn and a lot we can pick up. From the maritime industry, we see this for hundreds of years, how captains talk to their crew. But also, if people feel empowered to be able to speak to the captain. International Women's Day is just around the corner, and one of the hashtags there is empowerment. Do females feel empowered to raise issues? Do they feel like they can? Do they feel like they're being listened to? And that's something we need to start applying.
Yeah, I agree. Because ultimately, a happy crew is a safer crew, a more expeditious crew.
Yes.
So on and so forth. And I think those things are really what moves the needle when it comes to shipping.
Oh, completely.
As we conclude, is there any final thoughts or remarks you'd like to make in terms of how we can create a more inclusive environment for all in seafaring?
We need to listen to people. And when I say listen, I mean, we need to have our leaders listening to the groups of people who are impacted, who have a voice, who have ideas, have opinions, and they need to take the time to take those on board. It might not necessarily mean that those individuals might like what they come out with, but we need to be able to have a framework in place that fits a modern society and a modern workforce within the maritime industry. The UK Merchant Navy is such a fantastic organisation and industry that we should be rightly proud of in the UK as having a global standard. You know, people want to join the UK Merchant Navy, and I feel that if we listen to the impacted people and we put those frameworks in place, then we will start attracting more talent and recruiting more talent and retaining more talent and getting people who may have left for reasons of parents or childcare back into the industry, getting them back to sea, but being able to offer them the luxury of choice, which most people want to have these days.
Well said. Thank you so much, Hannah, for your time. I've had an absolute
Thank
pleasure
you.
speaking to you. See you
Thank you
soon.
very much. See you soon.